Hello all, June 29th, 2012. Well, let's go right over to Brent Crude and see what's happening with all these oil prices. So, I hope everybody has their climbing boots on. We're going to need them. Alright, it started out at 91.2, or roughly, and decided to go kind of bumpy along. And then it got to right here, and Wall Street woke up and noticed that the bankers are going to get another huge bailout. And of course, everything went straight up at about 1 million miles per hour. Then it noticed that there was some ripples going on, and it immediately went into slow hike and just steadily bumped along up until about here, when it decided the Germans are going to go ahead and go along with the bailout. And Wall Street just started rocketing, and so did oil futures. And then it sort of did the Friday thing, flatten out, and we ended up at 95.5. That doesn't look like a 5, does it? Alright, now that Brent Crude is going up, let's go see what's happening at the gas stations. Inexpensive gas station. Expensive gas station. And let's go look at boats in the bay. However, today it's very misty and foggy, very warm, tropical. Might be a little too foggy to see, but we'll go up and try anyway. To be honest, I don't even know if you looked at the bay or could even see it. I can't see the screen anymore, it's going blank, so I'm just sort of guessing. Anyway, I believe we have at least 2 barges in the bay and 1 small inner bay supply ship of some sort. What I wanted to talk to you about today was the world's machinery and what's going on with it. There's been a lot of trouble. Many countries are using unprofessional, cheap-made parts, and most countries are doing it. Japan and Germany were the 2 countries that were holding out from going cheap parts. But Japan, you know, they after the big earthquake, they just sold out and took most of the good products out and put in junk products, junk parts. And now Germany, who has held out the longest, just today announced that they were going to start using garbage parts. Well, let me go show you what I mean. So let's just take all the machines on the planet, and they're all built a little differently. Some of them have like 5 parts, some have 10 parts. The US has only 3 parts. Let me show you some of the, let's go through the parts on the US's machines. People in the US, you probably already know this. The US started out with their machines, and at the beginning they worked pretty, they were working okay. But then they started to get, cheap, and the machine, let's say that these are 2 cogs, and the cogs are like this, and the other cogs go in between, but they're not long enough, and so they'll slide against each other, and this cog will get behind this cog. This one would be going that direction, and this one would be going that direction. Let's see, actually it would be going, I've got that reversed. Okay, so the cog would be going this direction. So if this cog was at 5 miles an hour, this one would only be going 3. And by the time the next cog, this one would only be going maybe 1. So the machines in the US are very slow, and this is partially why. Let's look at the big picture. Alright, this is the main brain of the machine. It just sits up here. It's a pretty lonely place, really. So then there's other parts. There's lots of other parts, but there's a main part here with this kind of thing like this, and then it comes back up here. Now the other part is in mirror, sort of like this, like that, right? But theirs is bigger than that. This part here is bigger over here than over here. Now the machine has an output and an input. It takes in material in through here and through here, and it digests it first through this machine, and then it goes through this machine, and then finally up to this machine. Okay, this is really basic and just really not very in detail. So sometimes different parts of this machine output. Sometimes the output is this direction, and sometimes the output is in this direction. Now, the way you want this machine is you want good quality output up here, and out here. There's also good output from here. Okay, and it just goes in all directions. Okay, but these two parts of the machine, they tend to put out more material out this part here, and we're getting so much of this that there's too much. We're getting, you know, it just keeps building up, especially on this, you know, both these machines are really just, you know, it's just getting really, we're just overstocked. Now the problem is that this stuff here is becoming so overwhelming that it's bogging down this part of the machine. Let me show you an example. Okay, let's just take this part of the machine, right? Okay, this part of the machine has other parts to it. This part up here, and then there's other parts down here, and you know, these two big machines are connected. But sometimes all this machinery can't get it together. The cogs all end up getting their cogs right at each other, and they jam up. And this is happening most of the time. We're having extremely and terrible cog jam up. Okay, let me give you an example of cog jam up, or what we call cogging and jamming. This happens when both machines are broken, and they end up giving the problem to that top machine, such as which has happened over the last week here in the US. The top machine has pumped out all this stuff, things like show us your papers. As soon as the show us your papers order came down from the Supreme Court, immediately cities all over the US are deciding to immediately start implementing stop and frisk, as they call it. They're calling it stop and frisk. And San Francisco is no different. Mayor Lee has decided he wants to start stopping and frisking. And wasn't it just last video I asked when was the checkpoints coming? It sure didn't take long, did it? Another example of the machinery. And let me just show you one other thing. When this machine hands down a decision, it infiltrates the entire system and will corrupt it. And this machine here will start spewing stuff out here. And so will this machine. More hate, more stupid decisions, and the piling continues. It just gets thicker and thicker until before you know it, the whole machine is just buried in this crap. You know, bad legislation, it just reeks. Look at the smell and the reek coming off of this. Anybody have a gas mask? It even gets worse. In the US, this machinery has a propaganda part to it, and it is on overload. It's also spewing out the stuff, such as we're no longer in peak oil. We have abundance of oil. That's just newspeak. There's no officials saying that at all. The officials are saying just the opposite, that because the price of oil keeps fluctuating up and down and is now lower, that the oil companies can no longer afford to do the fracking work that is needed to get this oil, and it costs too much and takes too much oil to get the oil out. Our machines are all broken down, and now here we go again over in Europe. The machines are deciding to give more money to the bankers. Instead of taking the bankers to court and prosecuting them, Europe has decided to do the same thing that the US did, and that's just throw endless money at the banks, give them holidays. The board was covered with, well, you know, new eraser without all that stuff on it. Over here, I noticed something right about there. Do you guys notice it? Let's zoom in and see what that is. Now, I decided to try something different. Let me show you. Earth, moon. I live here. The moon is there. I'm transmitting out to space. I'm going to ricochet my transmission of what this number is. Yes, it's only a number, 1 through 99. Then I'm going to transmit it up into space, where it will hit and reflect off the moon back onto Earth. So it'll cover about this much of Earth. Now the Earth is covered with what's called the F layer in the atmosphere. And what I'm going to do is, after it ricochets off the moon, it'll come down and hit the Earth and ricochet back up onto the atmosphere like this, all the way around the planet Earth. Let me know the number. Let me know your opinion. Talk to you next time.